The Matador's Lubbock's newest Texas Tech store, offering the official Wreck 'em Tech shirt of the Saddle Tramps. Together, the Matador and the Saddle Tramps are ready to gear you up for Texas Tech football. Buy your Wreck 'em Tech shirt at the Matador for only $15 and feel proud that you are supporting the Saddle Tramps and Texas Tech. Start a new tradition. Stop at the corner and shop the Matador, or shop online at shopthematador.com.
Hi, and welcome to this week's episode of Matador Express. I'm your host, Everett.
And I'm Gaytan.
The weather here in Lubbock has been a little rough this week in general, and kind of in West Texas all over. It's been a little cold and a little snowy, and it's affected some of the sports, mainly the outdoor sports like track or baseball and softball. It's affected them in some of their scheduling. There's been some scheduling conflicts with that. Like on Tuesday, the Red Raider baseball team is scheduled to take its first road trip of the season. They've been on the game at home now for like 14 straight games. They're supposed to be taking on the Abilene Christian Wildcats in Abilene on Tuesday, and ACU ended up having to cancel that game due to some inclement weather. Abilene Christian was on the road this last weekend, and when it started snowing there in Abilene, they weren't able to get their tarp on the field, so the field conditions were a little too rough to play in. So Tech just ended up staying home and staying here and just having, I guess, kind of a week off. They didn't have a midweek game this week.
And Tech also had to rework its schedule against Sacramento State this week. They played one of their 4-game series games last night, winning on a walk-off from Tyler Nesloney. Through the walk-off, Tech only has one loss this season. And Everett, what are you seeing from this team so far?
You know, they look really good, Diego. They've been really strong. The first weekend against San Francisco, they were really strong on offense, scored something like 41 runs or something like that over a 4-game series. And then this past weekend, they took on Northern Illinois. And they had one loss in between there, but this past weekend they took on Northern Illinois, and it was the pitchers that dominated. The pitchers, I think they threw like all but one inning was a shutout inning. They gave up like 4 runs in the 9th inning of the game 3, I think. But other than that, they were pitching scoreless inning after scoreless inning. It just seems like this team coming in there now, they just expect to win. They've got a lot of veteran players, and it just looks like they don't ever feel like they're out of a game. I think a lot of that has to do with Coach Tadlock's mentality. He's been drilling into them. You should take it one pitch at a time, one inning at a time, and never look too far ahead. And just like you saw last night, I mean, they only had 4 hits throughout the entire first 8 innings, and then the 9th inning comes up, they get 4 hits in a row and end up winning that game 4-3. So it's been really, really great for them just to see them flourish like that and be coming in there expecting to win games.
And Tech has a tentative schedule to play a doubleheader Saturday starting at 2 p.m., and the final game of the series will be played at Sunday starting at 11:30 a.m.
Yeah, and both Tech basketball teams are entering, as kind of baseball kicks off, the Tech basketball teams are entering their final week of the season before they play the Big 12 Conference Tournament next week. At the end of the season, to kind of wrap up the season, because it doesn't look like either of our teams are going to be making the postseason tournaments. The men's basketball team was able to keep this last Saturday's game close. They only lost to Oklahoma, who's a top 25 team. They only lost 79-75, pushing that game into overtime. But then they went on the road this Wednesday and ended up losing. They were unable to keep that momentum, and they lost to TCU in Fort Worth, lost pretty bad. Diego, what do you think? I know you saw that TCU game. What do you think the difference was going from Saturday and then on to Wednesday?
The biggest difference was definitely the shooting. It's not so much the defense. The defense has been rather consistent throughout. There's those slip-ups in Iowa and then against Oklahoma earlier in the season. But after those games, they seem to be knowing where to post up defensively. But shooting-wise, it's just been Tech struggling shooting. That's just it. They take too many contested shots. They're having a hard time trying to run the offense they want to, set up screens. So that's really hurting them trying to get some good looks and shoot well.
Yeah, Tech's got a couple big things going on this Saturday. Both the men's and women's teams are going to be playing their senior games. It's the final home games of the year in the United Supermarkets Arena. So they got a doubleheader this Saturday. And in between those 2 games, they're actually playing an alumni game. We've got former Tech basketball coach Bob Knight coming back and a lot of the old players coming back to play just a kind of exhibition game. Is just a kind of fun thing to do in between the men's and women's games.
And the Lady Raiders also kept it close last Saturdays. And they only lost by 3 against their rival, the Texas Longhorns. They also got one. They lost again on the road when they took on Iowa State Tuesday as well.
Yeah, Candy Whitaker and her team kind of have struggled on the road this season. They've only kept it close in a couple games against Kansas and Kansas State. But they're also going to play, like I said, Saturday in the first game of the doubleheader that morning before the alumni game, and then after the alumni game will be the men's basketball game. That wraps up this week's episode of Matador Express. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.